Hey Paul, this is Alex in Vancouver
Hey.
here in Canada. Mid-August, it's a bit cloudy and pleasant, about 19 degrees Celsius. Where are you calling from?
So I'm in a place called Knutsford, which is near Manchester in the UK.
Hmm.
Um, so just a few miles away from Manchester. It's been very hot over here recently, although it's not so bad today. It's normal kind of Mancunian grey weather today, which is what I'm used to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I gotta add that about 9 years ago, or no, 8 years ago, almost made it to relocate to Sheffield. Had a job offering and didn't
Yeah.
pan out because I don't know, with Canadian visas and all that, and the HR over there didn't want to step in, and I just kind of bailed. But it would have been interesting if I made it to
Yeah.
Sheffield. I guess it's pretty close to Manchester, right?
Yeah, it's not too far away actually. It's probably about an hour in the car, something like that, so not too far.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So hey, I've been on and off trying to run this channel, which I call software breakthroughs for the 21st century, because I
Hmm.
felt that we are kind of, as you mentioned earlier, I think in one of your posts recently, uh, we've made breakthroughs in back in the 20th century thanks to Kent Beck primarily, and to this day,
Yep.
it's languishing. It's not going anywhere, other than individuals such as yourself who are running with the whatever the banner
Yeah.
and all that, but it just doesn't seem to gain any traction. And I think we should keep pushing, and these things should make a difference.
Yeah, it's a very it is quite surreal actually. It's funny because yeah, you mentioned that I've literally got the book on my desk right now
Yeah,
as it happens, the Extreme Programming book, and
yeah.
it's 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 a funny thing for me because like I've been in the industry now just about 20 years in total, and for probably about the last 13 or 14 years, I've been exposed to many of the techniques, if not all the techniques in this book, right? But the way that I came to know extreme programming is kind of funny because I wasn't exposed to it as extreme programming, right? So what happened for me was in about 2013, I joined the BBC. I was working at BBC Sports, and um, there were certain practices that they were doing at the time. Nobody ever told me, oh, this comes from like XP or anything, but test driven development was one of them. Um, Pair programming was another. We moved towards continuous integration. They weren't doing that properly at the point where I started, but we had a big push towards that and continuous delivery as well. Um, but at the same time, it was all kind of Scrum as well, right? So it was like we were doing the 2 week sprints. We were doing everything was in Jira. There was the whole you know tracking velocity and all of this kind of stuff, and also taking things like story points, what I thought very literally. And one of the very first planning meetings I was in, there was like a 10-minute debate on whether they could you know fit 32 points instead of 33 or something like that. And I remember thinking, what am I joining? What is this? Um, but it's a funny thing for me because I was exposed to quite a lot of stuff all in one go. So this kind of so-called agile, the Scrum stuff as well. And I had people telling me, literally telling me that agile development came from project managers. I remember being told that at one point, as in didn't come from software engineers. And I believed it initially because I was kind of new to it. And the funny thing for me was that over time, I started to develop a perspective and kind of opinions on which things were working and actually worked and which things had a lot less value, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it was things for me that there was the technical side of things I always felt was very important, right? Because things like test driven development, if you do it properly, it gives you this high level of confidence to make changes over time, right? And if you've got a high level of confidence and the fear of change is low, then that means that opens up a whole business kind of a whole business opportunities, right? Because you can experiment, you can try things out, and you don't have this fear of, you know, oh, if we change this thing, everything's going to explode and it'll take us forever. That goes away. And it wasn't until probably 4 or 5 years ago that I saw people talking about XP again, and I was like, oh, I've heard of this thing. I'd heard of it, kind of through the grapevine. But then I got a copy of this some time ago, actually. It's just timely that I happened to mention it on LinkedIn today. And I started reading through it, and I was like, oh my God, it's like everything that I think works really well and that I found for myself worked really well is in this. You know what I mean? And then it's like, I could skip to almost any part of this book and I just find myself nodding along. And it's like, and then I look at it and I'm like, well, why is it that, the industry is full of, it's we do T-week sprints. We track everything in Jira. We define success by whether we hit a sprint goal, and I don't really care about that. I care about for me. I want to build the best possible products for customers. I want customers to be really happy with it, and ultimately, I want to help businesses to actually make more money through, because the logical thing for me is that if you're building things that customers actually want and need, you will increase the chances of success in the marketplace, right? And so, and again, but this book it's got all this in it as well, and it talks about involving the customer, and do you know what I mean? So, sorry, I went on quite a bit of a rant there, very early on, but I think the interesting thing for me though is that, as I say, it wasn't introduced to me necessarily as XP. I was introduced to all of these practices, kind of a lot of them at once. And I started developing a perspective and kind of opinions on what works and what doesn't. And it just so happens to be that, for me, the stuff that's we would label as XP, that you would recognize as XP, that's all the stuff that I've seen working, and not just once or twice. So I'm a contractor now, so I move about, a fair amount, and I see it working in so many places. And I've seen it in different environments. And TDD for me is an absolute no-brainer. I do TDD everywhere I go. Yeah. I could probably carry on talking, but I feel like it'll just be me talking.
Everything you said so far is really bang on, nailing it, right? I would just add, because I'm a bit longer in tooth than you are, because my first paid software job was in 35 years ago.
Yeah.
In August 1990. And so I've been through some experiences that because it happened back in the 90s. And one thing I would add to what you're saying is, back then things were simpler, in a sense that we did not have the cloud. We did not have. It was a different world, and the XP made sense back then because, for example, one of my first jobs, I was working for the government health bureau, cutting paychecks to the local hospitals in British Columbia, as well as patient admission and discharge, etc. So I distinctly remember that I would, back then we were using mid-range computers, IBM AS400, which was like a business machine. So basically, Paul, we just go and cut the tape. I go and I make the change to the to the system or to the product. I cut the tape. I hop in my car. I drive to the hospital. I push. I install. I train the personnel on the spot. So you could not avoid working with customers. It was very, very skin in the game, where I would sit down with the customers, with the hospital administrators, and I would see their frustrations right there, and how upset they are, or how astonished they are that it works not the way they expect it to work. So I think that experience really precipitated the possibility of XP, what Kent-Beck experienced, saying, look, daily interaction with customers, giving them options, rather than, we'll go away and come back 6 months ago and then shove it down your throat. So it was, in my opinion, it was easier back then to formulate XP, rather than today, where you're just broadcasting out in the ether, and it's all on the cloud, and you have no idea what people who are experiencing your product are going through, and nobody's giving a chance to drive over there and sit down with them, etc. So I would just, I'd like to, put in a context, that contrast between how we used to deliver software 30 years ago versus how we're doing it now. And I don't know if that helps frame the conversation.
It does, but I still think, like, I still think it's possible, but well, there's still ways that we can speak to customers. Do you know what I mean? And whether it's speaking to them directly or whether it's even just recording customer behavior in software, which I don't think is quite the same, but like is at least something. For me, before I started in that job that I just mentioned, I was in a previous job, a place called Chilingo, and I was quite lucky in that I was building internal software. I was building software that was kind of being used by, it's a company that had just been bought out by Electronic Arts. They made video games. They made produced the very first version of Angry Birds. That was their big kind of hit, at the time. And in Cut the Rope and a few others. And so I was kind of working on software that helped the kind of producers and so on in the background. And what was interesting for me at the time was that because the people, my consumers, if you like, were sat a desk or two away from me, so I could just talk to them. Do you know what I mean? And I got used to that. And when I did move to the BBC, it was a bit of a shock when, okay, obviously it's at massive scale and all of that, but I did think that there'd be more of that side of things happening. And to be fair, during the time that I was there, I did see things improve quite heavily. They got to a point where they were doing lots of. It was quite cool actually. We had the, like when you see in like a detective like murder mystery, you see the double-sided mirror. They had that, and they had like they'd have like people come in and they'd try like a prototype version of like the app, and something that somebody like a designer will just mock together in kind of something like similar to Figma. I don't think Figma was really much of a thing back then, but that kind of thing. And we'd all be sat kind of watching them through the double-sided glass, which I always thought was really quite cool, But it was really interesting to see that. But then I worked at a place, contracted at a place called Equal Experts, who I've got a great deal of time for. Equal Experts, I think that they have a really kind of. My experiences were really positive, and the way that they kind of work. They would bring in entire teams into an organization, like an Equal Experts team, but we would interact with other teams on the ground floor and so on. And one of the products that I worked on there, it was a big law firm, and I don't know if I can say the law firm name, I'm not sure, but a big law firm anyway. They were one of the big top 5 law firms, and we were building a product that was for to help lawyers with their workflow. But I'm not a lawyer. Nobody on my team is a lawyer. We had a brilliant UX person, but again, doesn't have all this context. And so one of the things, we were based in the office of this law firm, and one of the things Equal Experts did was they managed to get a lawyer embedded on our team, which literally just sat with us. It's pre-COVID, so like we're all sat together, and that was amazing. And then we also had there was the UX person on our team was only ever a couple of weeks ahead of the engineers by design. And what he would do is we would build something like a new feature, and then he would go to there was an office in London, and he would sit there with a small team of lawyers who were using our software that we were building, and he would get feedback from them, and then he'd come back to the office and he'd tell us all the stuff that he'd learned and what was working, what wasn't. And then we might be in the middle of doing something, but if he came back and said, oh no, that feature we released last week, it's confusing for people. Actually, they said if we move this over here and move this to that page, it's better. And we'd have a quick discussion amongst ourselves. And then based on priorities, we could say, okay, yeah, we'll do that. We'll just do that now. And very quickly, it didn't take very long. It was clearly becoming a very useful product that people were really starting to enjoy using. I do appreciate what you're saying, though, that like not everybody has the benefit of that kind of level of interaction with customers, but it's something that I do think that should be prioritized more. Let's put it that way. I think that in a lot of circumstances, companies would have the opportunity. Where I'm working right now, we have I'm working in it's fintech, financial services, and I'm working on helping on the acquisition side of things, so that we're building like this multi-branded application for different credit card brands and for people to apply for credit cards and loans and that kind of thing. And one of the things that I kind of mentioned, the company, for example, has a call center, right, for people to call up and make payments and whatever, And I've mentioned this a few times in the background. Why can't we as engineers, not just engineers, but the whole team, why do we have no direct contact with people in the call center? Could we arrange that? Because they speak to customers every day, right? And you see what I mean? There's there are these opportunities. Sometimes you just kind of maybe have to look for them. I think.
And it's interesting how those modes came to be, where to me, and we're trying to re-examine that, but a lot of organizations feel it's more efficient or more bang for the buck or get more return on investment if they segregate.
Yeah.
I consult also, and you walk into a large organization, and first thing they tell you is over there are people who are paid to think, and over there are people who are paid to do what these thinking people tell them to do, which again, as you describe, there's a disconnect. And the resulting, the delivery is kind of underwhelming or sometimes disappointing. Like, okay, all this effort and all this work and all these geniuses at work, and we deliver this, and the customers are kind of like, nah, So we have to understand why this almost spontaneous what's the word? Propensity to spontaneously just drift apart like continents, and then and that's why I appreciate your handle on your YouTube channel is feedback-driven developer or development. I forgot, which what you're describing is you need feedback, and sometimes delayed feedback is desirable, but often, most of the time, immediate feedback is better, I think.
Yeah, the thing for me, I guess, so because I was thinking about this for some time, and I was like, at some point, I want to write like a kind of blog or a technical, from my own perspective, one of the specialities I guess I have is not just test-driven development, but test-driven development on the front end. And it's very rarely done on the front end in the industry. But I've been doing it for over a decade, and it works really well. And yet I go from one place to another, and almost nobody knows how to do it, or they're trying it, but they're doing it badly, and I have to kind of show them. And the amount of times I see these eureka moments where it clicks with people. And sorry, just to go back to the feedback-driven thing, it's the reason that I kind of came up with that was I was trying to think, well, if I'm going to buy a domain name and stuff, because I do have the domain, like I can tell you it's feedbackdriven.dev. At the moment, there's literally one page on there and just a form for a newsletter. But I want to sit down and focus and write some of this stuff down, But my thinking behind it was I was looking at, should I have TDD in the name of the domain? And I was like, that feels kind of all right, but like it's not quite. There's more to it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, TDD is a big part of it for me, but it's not the only thing. And I started thinking about it, and I'm like, well, what kind of encapsulates the thing that I actually care about the most? And to me, it all comes back to feedback. It's you have technical feedback. So TDD is an excellent example of technical feedback. You get feedback in seconds. I create bugs all the time, but I spot them within. Oh, it's not even me, but my process spots them seconds after I've created one. So it's so rare for software that I've written to end up with a bug in production, or even to go, pre-production. I don't really like pre-prod, but in some organizations you're made to do it. But yeah, it's the whole the whole mentality for me is it's about, yes, you've got your technical feedback like that, and then you've got non-technical feedback, which is information from customers or stakeholders as well. It's why I like internally I'm a big fan of demoing software early and often. As soon as we've got something to show, we should demo it. And like I don't mind demoing work in progress, or if we haven't made much progress that week or whatever, we can just demo that, just keep it open, It's the same with the non-technical side of it. So I'm just trying to gather my thoughts, but the key to it for me though is that if you're doing the wrong thing, like say where we might have the best code in the world, but if we're building the wrong products or something that isn't going to be a hit with customers, do you really want to risk, waiting 6 months or a year or 18 months to find that out? Do you know what I mean? And so I would much rather, my kind of thinking with it is, get something out that people can use, build it with it in a way where the technical foundation is really strong so that you can change things easily over time, or with very low very, very low fear, I should say, high confidence, which is perfectly possible to do. And then, based on the feedback, adapt, right? I think a lot of companies, the way that I kind of see this kind of friction, because I think there is a friction with people at the top who come in and, I've got £2 million to invest in this product. I wish I did. I'd love to be able to, but you know what I mean? I come in there, I'm the person at the top with the money, right? And I want to ensure that my investment, isn't wasted. So I need people to then come up with and tell me exactly what they're going to do and what they're going to deliver and all of this. You know what I mean? And how much is it going to cost me? And I can understand that mentality, but the problem is there's a deep kind of irony in that kind of top-level command-driven mentality, in my opinion, actually increases your risk significantly. Because if you took a different approach and just accept the reality that people can't tell you exactly if it's going to be a hit, they can't tell you if you might not get exact dates and stuff, but if you have a process where you can find out as quickly as possible that this idea you've got actually isn't quite right, or maybe it's nearly there but you're missing something, or you could pivot, do you know what I mean, at a certain point, the quicker you get that feedback and act on it, the quicker you move into the right direction, and that increases your chances of making more money. That's, to me, there's a kind of irony that it's often the people at the top who have this kind of, I don't want problems, I want solutions kind of attitude. It almost puts their money at greater risk than if they worked with people who could gather feedback quickly and push the product in a better direction based on feedback. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, yeah. I have 3 comments, if you would allow
me.
The sure. First comment is, I'm delighted to hear that you are doing TDD on the front end, because this is the most neglected area. Just quickly, I will add, earlier this year, you've heard of Robert Martin, Uncle Bob.
Yeah.
I cut a video with him on board, and I have another channel called Coding Interviews with Alex, where we take talented people such as yourself who volunteer, and we pretend you're applying for a job, and then we have a panel. This time it was me and Uncle Bob. We are the interviewers, and we throw a challenge at you, and you share your screen and you walk us through your line of reasoning and how you tackle the problem. And it's not about solving the solution, but for people who are watching to learn how top-notch software developers operate and think, and to remove the mystique, and to see how we, like you say, we all create bugs all day long, but how do we roll with the punches? So to cut a long story short, what I'm trying to bring to the light here is Uncle Bob is one of those people who is adamant that TDD is not applicable on the front end. And that may be doing the damage. So maybe you and I should drag him on the call sometime later, and you show him that he's wrong, because he's quite, he's a stubborn man. He's a brilliant man, but he's a stubborn man, and he's digging his heels. He's like, no, I would never do TDD on the front end. So it would be beautiful if you could kind of arm wrestle with him and show him.
I'll show him. Yeah, bring it on. Let's do it. Honestly, do it. I'll show you.
And I didn't have ammunition to push back, right? And I'm like, okay, well,
no, I can push back. Honestly, I've been doing, to give you an idea, I mean, I've been doing TDD on the front end since about probably 2013, something like that. And I do it every day. I've been doing it, I've done it in every organization I've been at. And it absolutely, not only is it possible, it works beautifully. It's really, really good. But the the interesting thing there when you say that, Uncle Bob Martin, of course I know who he is. I've got some of his books.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've always
Not some
disagreed
people
with
don't
him.
know who, not sorry. Some of our colleagues don't know who he is, which is like, come on.
No, but I'm fully aware. But yeah, the interesting thing for me is that a lot of people who over the years have even not just pushed for TDD, but who were involved in I don't know, actually coming up with the idea or popularizing it and writing books on it. Most of them came from, if not all of them, came from the back end perspective. Do you know what I mean? And that's where, most of the so it's interesting because what most people
and the green screen
yeah.
before the GUI, right?
Oh yeah. Oh well, yeah. I mean, I still love the I still love the terminal. To be fair, I love it. But no, it's yeah. I can show you, and it's the funny thing is though, when I see the advice that most of these people give, I almost just always end up disagreeing with how they suggest to do it. So yeah, I can. What would be ideal for me is because the way that I tend to do it, I break it down into phases. I actually do have a talk on. You can see on YouTube. It's not on my main channel actually. It was. Do you know Tech Excellence? The Valentina.
I had one talk on that channel. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I did a presentation that it does cover TDD on the front end, but it wasn't. I covered a lot of ground in that talk, so it wasn't just about that. It was about kind of so much. Like I covered a lot of ground, but I gave a small demo of it, and I do talk about the process. And what I would say is, if you wanted to do it, I'd be absolutely I'd love to do it because honestly, if he argues against it, it'll be fun. It will be a lot of fun that call. But what I will say though is that the way that I kind of I typically go with TDD on the front end is so at the very beginning, you've got a few concerns on the front end, right? So you've got the look and feel, and then you've got the behavior, right? So the look and feel, like the CSS and stuff, I don't test CSS in that way. But when it's behavior, I do, right? But there's an exception to CSS because if there is a business behavior associated with it, so I don't know, a user performs some kind of action and then an element disappears or appears on the page. That to me is a behavior, so I would test that. But what I'm getting at is that the best way to do it would be if you could, I understand that you want to set it as a kind of technical test, so I shouldn't know what's coming, which I'm fine with. But the only issue I would say is that to really kind of show it, the process that I have is that I always, I normally start with styling kind of first, and a style, so I know the markup and the style beforehand, because I've got the look and feel right, but then I kind of recreate the whole thing with the behavior going test first. Does that make sense? So I wouldn't want to be writing CSS on the call is what I'm getting at. Do you know what I mean? But if you want to do it, if you could tell me maybe in advance, here's what it's going to look. You don't have to tell me the behaviors, but here's what it looks like, and I can have some styling ready because that's how I would normally do it. What I typically do is I use tools like Storybook, right? So I don't know if you're familiar with Storybook. Yeah. So typically, what I would do is if we've got a new front end component coming up, I usually get the styling in first, and then I'll show that to UX or whatever first, and they can see it and they can say yes, it looks right in all these various viewport sizes and so on, and then we're good. And then we come to do the actual behavior, and that's where I almost take it as if I've not written any of that code, and then I kind of redo it, but with the behavior this time. Do you see what I mean? And so, yeah, I'd absolutely love to do it, though. Honestly, it'd be so much fun.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I think his principal argument against doing TDD, he feels that there's a lot of arbitrarily finicky feedback from the users. Oh yeah, not necessarily the look and feel, but the user journey, and no, now show this, no, when I click, and he feels that's too much back and forth, which he feels it's maybe a bit frivolous as compared to your business rules on the back end, which are way more reasoned about and more rational. Front end can invoke some emotional. I think that's where he's coming. Maybe I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it would be awesome to get you two together and butt heads and see where we get.
Yeah, we can do, honestly.
Because, you know, he's
Just
smart
one
man.
other.
You
Yeah.
know, he's a smart
Yeah.
man, and he has strong arguments, and I would love to see you convince him otherwise. Okay,
Yeah,
so
no, that would
we
be
can talk
fun.
offline, and we can get if Uncle Bob is available. Uh, another
Yeah.
another another feedback. What was it? Oh yeah, I recently had some discussions online with regards to. Usually people say, well, TDD is not about testing; it's about design. But I'm in the camp of saying TDD is not about design. TDD is about feedback.
Yep.
Primarily, that's the purpose I'm doing TDD is, like you say, I crave instant feedback.
Yep.
Because code as text is unfortunately not a good, in my opinion, not a good technology, but this is what we have. So I can go and arbitrarily make changes to the text, and the paper takes anything, as the saying goes. So I'm not comfortable when I go and make a change and I hear crickets. The
Yep.
system is just sitting
Yeah.
there idling and like, okay, whatever, dude. I want the system to immediately spring into action and tell me,
Yep.
oh, I hit the barrier here, I hit the wall, or oh, everything is smooth sailing. And that's where I see TDD really helping me, giving me as
Yeah.
soon as possible, push back,
Yeah.
or go green, go red, whatever. That to me is the primarily. So I would turn the tables and I would say, TDD, good design is necessary for quick feedback, not even other way around. You know?
Yeah. The thing for me is so it's interesting. I think I pretty much agree with what you're saying, really. I mean, I do. The way that I've always described it is I don't use TDD primarily as a design mechanism, but I listen to my tests and I will adapt according. So if something, what I like about well, there's many things I like about it, but in terms of design, TDD forces you to be a consumer to your own API right at the very beginning. Whether you're doing it front end, back end, whatever, you have to be, you create some form of API and you have to be a consumer straight away. So you instantly get a feel for what it's like as a consumer of that API. And sometimes I'll be working, usually, like, if I'm going to do a piece of work, I don't think there's anything wrong with a little bit of planning. Like, I don't like big upfront planning, but like drawing a few boxes or here's what I think I'm going to do, you know, that kind of thing. But then I'll start, and as soon as if something just feels wrong, you know, we talk about cold smells, right? But this is like kind of a design smell or something. You know, I'll adapt then. So to me, it's TDD plays a role in the design. But it is based on like the feedback that I get. Does this thing feel right as I'm working on it? Do you know what I mean? And because I'm exposed to it very early, what tends to be the case is like so we did a big piece of work recently in the place that I'm at now, and one of the big things that we did, it's a multi-branded application, as I said before, right? So I think we've got 9 or 10 brands now, and it's about a journey, an acquisition journey that takes you through applying for a loan or maybe a credit card. And the thing is, though, the branding is it's complicated, right? Because you've got a visual look and feel that's different. You've got some pages, elements look different. Sometimes for different brands, elements appear and don't. Sometimes you have different text in certain areas, but also the journey logic itself can be slightly different between brands. So you can be redirected to a different page in a different order, depending on whether you're coming from one brand or another. And that gets complicated quickly when you've got 100, like I said, we've got 9 or 10 brands, but there's so many variations, right? And it was getting out of hand for us, and it was getting really complicated. So I worked with somebody else, I paired with somebody to create a kind of API for how this would work. And there were these kind of big debates going on, like people wanting to plan everything up front, you know, no, we need to know exactly how this is all going to, you know, and I kept saying to everybody, just kind of calm down a bit. We'll have a good idea of what we're doing. We'll sketch out some ideas. We'll start test driving it. And as soon as we find out that something doesn't work, we'll just adapt, because the test will make it easy for us to adapt and change, right? And that's what happened. We ended up delivering it very successfully. But not only that, people who've come into the code base since I had a satisfying moment recently where one of the guys on our team was pairing with somebody new. This was only a week or two ago. Somebody new joined the team and he was pairing and he was explaining bits. And he messaged me afterwards to say, just so you know, when I was showing this bit of the code, I was so proud of like how neat it is and stuff, because it ends up looking like it was really well designed. And it kind of was. It wasn't just organically, didn't just come magically out of doing TDD, but I knew I didn't need to know all the answers necessarily up front. I had to have an idea where I'm going and factor that in, but I also feel comfortable enough to not have to implement more than we actually need right now, and to know that it's going to be all right. I can change the API. The cost of change is lower, so that's how it helps me with design. Do you know what I mean? It's I don't expect I'm just going to come up with a magically beautiful design if I don't think at all, but it's a combination of thinking about what you're doing, having, bringing your experience and stuff, and knowing that the cost of change remains low. Do you see what I mean? And you get that feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I would add, I'm big on what I call interruptibility, and a lot of people frown upon. I think one of the virtues of a good software developer or engineer is eager to be interrupted. Most people say, no, don't interrupt me. I'm in my zone. I'm always delighted when I get interrupted. As more frequently, the better. I'm a lousy designer. I'm pretty bad at design. But thanks to TDD and the process you described, I end up with a pretty acceptable, tolerable design, because TDD keeps interrupting me. The process keeps really kicking me in the nuts, and like, and without TDD, I would go and build some house of cards, and I would think everything is okay. And only later to discover that it's just building on a quicksand. But TDD, every step of the way, is kicking me really hard and saying, look, you're just painting yourself in a corner. What you just propose here is not testable at all. Do you realize that? Right? Otherwise, I wouldn't realize if I was not test-first minded. I would think, this is it makes perfect sense, this API is great, but the TDD is telling me, no, it's not testable. You're just going in the wrong direction. All of a sudden, your tests are going to start really being sluggish and slowing. Anytime my test suite starts slowing down, I know I'm in trouble. I know something is terribly wrong with the design. I don't know what it is, but like you say, the cost of change is minimal, the feedback is frequent, all the good things, but we need to put ourselves in the position where we are interruptible, instead of being macho and saying, no, I'm going to be banging the code for this afternoon and don't anybody interrupt me. Right?
Yeah, it's a funny thing when you say that as well, because I remember some time ago, years ago, actually having the perspective of somebody who didn't like being interrupted, and I am in the zone, and I remember arguing against people who said, oh no, you should embrace that. But I've come definitely the complete opposite now, but that happened over time. And one of the things that so we're talking there about like TDD doing that, it's a technical form of interruption. But I, as you also said, being interrupted by people as well. For me, I enjoy it now, and the reason I do, again, it's one of the things for me is I feel like over the years, I became a lot more rounded as a developer. The early years in my career, I was focused almost exclusively on the tech side of things. And I was that guy for a while who put my headphones on and I want to be in a dark corner and I just want to bash it out. Do you know what I mean? That's how I was. But over years, I was lucky enough to work with some really strong people and pair with them as well. I love pair programming, and see how some of these people work and how they would be given a technical problem to solve. And instead of just going into it, they go and speak to people. But why exactly? Explain again why you need this thing, And they start breaking it down and having these conversations. And all of a sudden, the amount of times I saw out of just a conversation, we don't need all of this stuff actually. And actually, we only need this smaller thing, and that's perfect. And the business people are like, no, that's all we ever wanted. And it's something that I actually, to me, it's like a source of pride. If I have a conversation with somebody and it turns out we don't need to write that code at all, I actually feel quite, really good about that, But yeah, as you say, it's why I'm quite happy with the the feedback driven kind of, domain and stuff, it's I think it does kind of capture what is, to me, is very important. It's technical and non-technical
Yeah.
forms of feedback.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can tell you, my first promotion on the job happened when I was working at that government bureau for healthcare. My boss
Yeah.
calls me to her office, and she said, Alex, I was kind of monitoring or observing and looking at how you work, and I'm blown away. I'm like, why is
Mhm.
that? You can spend days just coding, and you never even stop to see if you compile. This shows such level of mastery. It was the exact.
Mm.
She thought that prowess, which I was a
Mhm.
naive, stupid, completely green, wet behind ears. We all thought
Mhm.
the machoism was like, hey man, I can keep banging the code. It was COBOL back then, all day long. I
Yeah.
don't even have to stop to compile because I'm so good at it. So we were avoiding feedback. We enjoyed working in secrecy. We were
Mhm.
antisocial, and all the
Yeah.
bad things that we are still suffering under to this day, where most people value working in secrecy. Every now and then they
Yeah.
surface with the PR, and they replace collaboration with communication. Communication is very low bandwidth compared to collaboration, which I know
Yeah.
we don't have to belabor on that. Um,
Yeah.
and another thing I want to just mention quickly, the entire XP philosophy is all about interruptibility, because
Mhm.
XP philosophy brings options to the clients, meaning at the end
Yep.
of every business day, you have the choice as a business. Do we want to continue tomorrow? Are you good? No hard feelings. We have your what you paid for is always up and running,
Mhm.
not in a, like you say, it's an incremental. At this
Yep.
point in time, we have these options. These features are, but they're up and running, and you can walk away. You
Yep.
can say, thank you very much. This was brilliant. We don't intend to continue anymore. Maybe later. That's the
Mhm.
beauty of XP. That's the promise to the business, that we, at any
Yep.
point in time, every day you have something working. It's not,
Yep.
maybe not something to write home about, but it works, and you got your money's worth.
Yep.
And therefore, we are, as a team, we are interruptible, and,
Yep.
and, and that's
Yep.
our promise to the business, right? That's our value. And
Yep.
unlike the waterfall, well, give us 18 months and we come back and you.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it, talking about it like this, it's just so bizarre that to me anyway, that it hasn't taken over the industry. It is such a bizarre thing because it's at least from my perspective, it just works so well. You know what I mean? It's like you say, if you're the person with the checkbook, would you not rather be in that position where the team are delivering something, it is working, and they say to you, okay, if you want to call it a day, that's fine, or we continue. Is that not, surely that's far lower risk than,
yeah,
give me a Gantt chart with, like,
yeah,
18 months on it,
we we are professionals. We show concern and consideration for our employers, and
Yeah.
I value I'm delighted that you want to invest the money. Pay me something, but I will be very careful with your money, and I will at the end of every day I will give you some value and will tell you, do you want to continue or not? This is a professional
Yeah.
behavior, and
Yeah.
ethical. I think it's ethics, and so.
Yeah.
The problem, from my perspective, maybe you disagree. The biggest problem is optimizing for utilization. So, like you say, if you're a
Mhm.
guy with 2 million pounds, and now you're assembling a team of genius developers, and now your each hour is costing you £5,000 per hour, you want to see something for that money, and you make the
Yeah.
mistake veering towards, let's make sure everybody's busy all the time. And that's what
Mhm.
my
Yeah.
bosses sometimes tell me, Alex, you gotta make sure that everybody's plate is full at all times. I don't want people idling because we're paying big bucks. And that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm always like, look, have you considered, instead of optimizing for utilization, because that's foolish, because fully optimized highway becomes a parking lot. It's kind of
Yep.
defeats its own
Yep.
purpose. Why don't we shift focus, optimizing for value delivery?
Yep.
But that's much
Yep.
harder because it's much easier to track utilization. What is value? How do we track how it's being delivered? It takes brain power, it's hard work. People go for the low, like I said,
Yep.
tickets, the burn down charts, blah blah blah. That's vanity metric that doesn't help anyone. Mass this process, and then
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
I
That's
talk too
exactly.
much.
No. It's exactly how I see it. That's yeah. I don't disagree with that at all. But I know some. I've thought about this myself in the past, right? And if I had like a big wad of cash to invest and I had a product to build, I'm lucky enough to work with some extremely talented engineers, right? And most of the best ones that I know, in my opinion, not all of them, there's some really good perm ones actually, but most of the best ones that I know, in my opinion, are contractors now in the UK. So, the whole thing with contractors, they cost a lot more in the short term, but you can just replace or whatever at any point in time. I was thinking about this, and I was kind of daydreamed in the past. Like, if I was assembling a team and I could just pick people that I know that I've worked with in the past, who would I pick? Right now, I'm not going to name any names or anything, but there was one person in particular who I worked with on a few gigs together because I've introduced him into places as well before because he's so good. And I thought to myself, but I know for a fact that I'd pay his money if I had it, if I could do it, and I know he's expensive, but I'd pay it. But I wouldn't care if the guy was busy half the time. I just care that he's delivering what he should be, and that because I like who cares whether he's like if you have a team who are always busy and they get the Jira charts look amazing every 2 weeks. God, I hate Scrum so much, but if they it all looks amazing every 2 weeks, you've got like your little velocity chart and everything looks good, and you've got some spreadsheet somewhere, and this team is their numbers are really high and so on. What does it matter if like that what they're doing brings in no money or doesn't help customers in any way? Like, what does that matter? You could have a team of people who you know barely write any code, barely do anything, but they produce 80% of the business's money. Are they not more valuable? Like, who cares? I actually, it's not about busy work, right? And having some slack as well. Not only does it help in terms of unexpected things coming up and being able to handle those things. That's kind of an obvious thing, but it gives people a bit of thinking space as well. And when you've got really talented people who, like you say, are professional and actually care about what they're doing, you give them a little bit of thinking space and good things are almost certainly going to happen. Do you know what I mean? That new ideas will come up, and I don't know, they'll just think of ways to improve things. Do you know what I mean? This
I mean,
is, yeah.
the so-called success theater that you described, sometimes is
Mm.
called the watermelon effect. I don't know if you heard of that.
No, I've not heard of that.
So
Yeah.
basically, every 2 weeks we get together, the watermelon is getting bigger and bigger. It's nice and green. Everything is in green until
Mm.
such time when you open it up and everything is in red.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, that's
you
it.
know.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
in the interest of time, I don't want to take too much of your time, and let's switch gears, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed your recent video on mutation testing,
yeah.
because I'm a staunch proponent. I've been doing this for like 10 years, and
Hmm.
I often get hired. They bring me in as a best practices guy. So the guy who's going to kind
Hmm.
of introduce, and a lot of teams really hate my guts because I also push mutation testing, and
Hmm.
it really is a cold shower when you have a team with like 100% test coverage, everything's beautiful, and then like the army of surviving mutants, and they're like, oh, but who
Yeah.
cares, blah blah blah. So I really appreciated your video. I think it's really good. Everybody should watch it because you
Thank
bring
you.
really good points, and it's an illustrative thing where you have all your columns are like in green, that's the watermelon, right?
Mhm.
And then you run
Yeah.
striker, and all of a sudden, oops. Now
Yeah.
that on the side, we don't want to hear necessarily pump the mutation, which I think is a brilliant thing, and you brought a lot of good points. But I want to just apply to the AI and to the vibe coding and all that,
Yep. Yep.
because I think it is indispensable. A lot
Hmm.
of people
Yep.
are complaining when they're doing AI-assisted coding that yeah, everything works, but actually I don't know what extraneous code may have been written that I'm not aware of, and I think mutation
Yep.
testing is a perfect mechanism to singling that out. Say, well, what about this chunk over here? What's this all about, right? And like you
Yep.
say,
Yep.
we are delighted when we delete chunks of code. It's great.
Yep.
We love deleting code. Let's be honest.
Yep.
So
Yep.
can you talk a little bit more about your experiences, what your philosophy on Striker is?
Yeah, so there's a few things to cover there, I guess, from the AI perspective. I mean, well, just quickly on the Striker thing. So I haven't, so I do say in the video as well, but I haven't really used Striker professionally
Yeah,
before. This
yeah.
is kind of new to me. I say it's new to me. I didn't know that there was even a name for this or that you could automate it until maybe 18 months or so ago, maybe 2 years ago. What I've done for years though is um, kind of a maybe a less less like a more manual version of what you do when
Yeah,
you join
we
a team,
described
right?
it in
So
a video. Yeah, it's
yeah,
really,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Okay, yeah.
it's a good.
So again, maybe for people who haven't seen that. So if I'm reviewing somebody's PR, PR is a whole discussion in themselves. But if I'm reviewing somebody's PR, I have a habit of pulling down the code. I'll run the tests. Almost always, you expect to see them pass because it's a PR, and it should pass. And then I'll go in and I'll just look at the code, and you've got a greater than this. If age is greater than 18, do this. So then I'll change it to less than, and run the test. And the amount of times you see the test pass when they should fail. So I have done that for a long time. The automated way of doing it, I did try to bring it in into a previous place, but I didn't have a huge amount of time to spend trying it. And the problem that I had at the time was that it was very slow, right? And I just didn't have enough time to really investigate it much more. But my thinking on this now is my understanding is that there's an incremental mode to it, which allows you to kind of test to only mutate things that have changed. So I need to experiment with that more. To go into the whole AI side of things. So I don't know if are you aware of the kind of Claude MD file that I wrote some time ago? So you might not be aware of this. So if I give you this, can I give it you in the chat if you want to just?
Sure.
I don't know if you want. So I wrote this. Oh, my keyboard isn't. That's weird. Sorry, my keyboard's not working. Let me just. Oh, that's really strange. My keyboard isn't working, so I can't type. But if you go to if you go to my GitHub, which is City Paul, and you look at my dot files, I've got dot files there, and there's a Claude folder there with a Claude MD in it,
Yep.
and it's public, and the Claude MD file there, it stresses the importance of going test first. I've got it's a really big file, and some people criticize it for being a bit too big, and it probably is. I think it's probably fair, but I've got a ton of rules in there and loads of examples, so I go into quite a lot of detail because I was finding that Claude was not, when I first started trying to use it, it was running away, doing way too much stuff, right? And I couldn't constrain the scope of what it was doing. I didn't have confidence that it was testing things properly. I was throwing away most of what it was doing. This is on a personal project of mine. So I created this Claude MD file, which has a load of what I consider to be kind of rules that I follow, some of which I think are just kind of objectively better, right? So test first, for example, and I've really emphasized the test first in it. But then there's other things that are just maybe a bit personal to me, my kind of coding style and stuff like that. I found, so I made a video. If you go on again, if you go to my YouTube, it's a much longer video. It's like an hour long. It's the first one I ever did. And it's an hour and a bit long. And it's me showing how I was getting Claude to use this kind of TDD and XP kind of approach. And I managed to get it to a point where it's far more effective. Let's put it that way. It's not perfect, but it's far more effective. So by making it go test first, I should be careful with this. Sorry, it's not test-driven development in the way that me and you would understand, because it doesn't quite do it that way. It doesn't go one test and then what it tends to do, even though I tell it in the instructions, go one test at a time, and do you know what I mean? Then make it pass, and then refactor if you see a reason to. It tends to go multiple tests at once, writes a chunk of them, and then makes them pass, and so on. But I'm kind of all right with that at the moment because I've been experimenting to see how it goes and does it work for the LLM. And it seems to work quite well because what seems to happen is it will, going test first of all, constrains the scope of what it's going to work on, right? So because it has instructions, your job here is to write these tests, then make them pass, and then you commit, right? Or do a refactor and then commit. Well, you should commit, refactor, then commit, and that seems to work really well. I should emphasize that also it didn't, this is a code base that I'd started myself, my normal way. So my tests are all based on behavior, not implementation details. And I forced it to follow that approach and so on. So I've had quite a lot of success with that. So Actually, the talk that I gave, the YouTube video where I talk about mutation testing, is in the context of that repository because I'd gotten it to the point where I have 100% coverage. And what I had been doing all along was trying to get it to work in smaller chunks, going in this kind of test first style, and then it will create a PR, and I kind of review the PR myself. Again, it's a whole other discussion because I'm not a big PR fan, but it works well for this flow. Of course, it's, you're not dealing with humans, right? So I want to check it. It's appropriate, I think. And then so so I'd review the code, and then I'd do my kind of thing where I'd manually try and mutate things, right? And I've been doing that, and I had this niggling doubt though, and at one point I was thinking, well, I'm almost going too quickly through this, and I must have gaps. I was reading through it, and I'm like, I know that okay, coverage is 100%, but I've just got this feeling that there are gaps in there. So that's when I thought, you know what, mutation testing, I'll take the time to try and run that through Striker. And so that's what I've done. So the video that you've seen there, that you saw there, was exactly that. It was done on the same day that I'd got that working. And as it happens, because it's a spare time project and I've got young kids and I'm very busy, I tend to just work on a Sunday evening on it because I want to spend time with my kids. So I don't do it all the time. It's usually Sunday evenings that I work on it. But my thinking on it now is that the next thing that I want to do on that is exactly what you said, because I think it's exactly the kind of thing you need, especially when you're using an LLM. I mean, you should do it anyway, but my thinking now is it's going to go test first. It's going to constrain the scope of what it's doing, so it's smaller chunks. And then as part of the review process, or even before that, I'm going to force it to always run the mutation test in incremental mode is my thinking. So it should just check, and any surviving mutants, it either has to plug the hole or understand why it's okay, because maybe there's a reason. I mean, there might be the odd reason, for that. But that's my thinking, is to really kind of push it with. But what I will say though is that by going in this way, this kind of test first manner, I found that suddenly the tooling has gone from being like a novelty, like a bit of a party trick, but couldn't really use it, to actually I'm saving myself weeks of time here. Like really, I mean, on a Sunday I can do probably a week's worth of work in about 5 or 6 hours. But I say that, but to me we're not really there yet, because I don't truly have the confidence that I should have, because we've seen that through mutation testing, right? So I don't see it as until my next thing is to do what I've just said. But then I need to take the time out to plug those holes first as well. And I want to go through them one at a time laboriously. I want to get either complete confidence in mutation testing, as in like no mutants at all, or if there are mutants, there has to be a good reason as to why. So an example, I remember giving an example in the video, there is some CSS styling at one point that isn't associated with a behavior. I just happen to be using like a function, a JavaScript function to determine. I can't remember exactly the context on it, but it isn't a behavior that I would consider like a business behavior. And so to me, it's like that's an example of why I'm being very deliberate about what I'm leaving. And do you see what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. And the teams I encourage the teams to sit down and to collaborate on calibrating the mutation testing tool to safely, ignore these things, skip over that, don't worry about that. We are all cool with that, but that's a team decision, right? And then whatever else is left, I gather, I advise you need to kill those mutants. Because whether it's human or AI assisted, we all tend to produce bloat. Bloat is the nemesis of our profession. Somehow things just mushroom. I can't explain why. So I think we are on the hour now. I don't want to keep any longer. I really appreciate you blazing the trail. I would like to ask if we can maybe continue later. I don't think we've exhausted, not even nearly, the topic. There's so much more to talk about. So if you don't mind, let's plan maybe for later when you have some time. Either I drag in Uncle Bob, or you and I can continue with this discussion.
I'm happy with either or even both. Like, it's fine with me.
Excellent.
That's fine with me. definitely, if you can reach out to Uncle Bob, you know, honestly, because that will be so much fun, honestly, especially if he's really against it, because honestly, I'll show him. But like, it's good, it's good.
He's
It'll
gonna
be
jump
fun.
on a challenge because he's committed. He's gonna trample all over. He's convinced he's gonna trample all over anyone who tries to convince him otherwise. So it's gonna be fun match, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Put on your best boxing gloves, or, but
It's gonna be amazing. I love it.
But
Yeah.
Aside from that, I think what we tackled here is just scratching the surface. I think
Yeah.
you and I have a lot of other things to talk about. And my brain
Mm-hmm.
is just buzzing as you're talking, but we don't want to just spread too much time. So thank you so much for your hour.
Yep.
It's
No
been
worries.
really enjoyable and great to meet you in person virtually.
Yep.
And if you
Yep,
ever
you too.
happen to travel to Vancouver, give me a shout. We can get together for a beer.
Yeah, same if you're ever in the UK, especially in the Manchester area. But yeah, no, it was fun. I enjoyed it, and yeah, happy to do another call or multiple in the future. Yeah, we'll
Thank you
sort
very
it.
much, Paul. So we'll talk soon. Okay.
Yeah,
Cheers.
awesome. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Bye. Bye.